Rants. Today we are going to be talking about the new Big 12 Conference. It's been around for a long time, but it's all different this year. It's the last year of one way, and next year will be completely different again. So that's what we're going to be talking about. This is Paul.
Couple of major changes. Texas and Oklahoma bailed on the Big 12 and are moving to the SEC Conference.
This is their last year.
They were the top two teams in the conference for a lot of years. Haven't been lately, but they were for a lot of years. And the SEC thought they were big money makers, so we get them this year and then they're gone. So the Big 12 ran out and put 4 new teams in the conference that will start this year, meaning we're not 12 this year, we're 14.
There's actually 14 teams, and West Virginia has the advantage of playing all 4 of those new teams this year.
Those 4 teams include Cincinnati, Central Florida, BYU, and Houston, the school that our old coach Dana Holgerson is now coaching.
Right.
They'll all play this year, and they're on our schedule.
Right.
Next year, the Big 12 then went and picked some teams out of the Pac-12, and they include Utah, which is a top 10 team this year.
Very good finish last year. Good team last year.
Arizona, Arizona State, and Colorado.
Which is really interesting because Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, just went to Colorado.
They had a brand new coach.
And it's his first year there this year.
So next year we lose Oklahoma and Texas, and we add those 4 new guys, so there'll be 16.
The Big 12 will have 16
teams. This year's 14, next year it's 16. And we'll still call it the Big 12, I guess, because math is hard.
The Big 10 doesn't have 10 schools anymore either. The Pac-12 hadn't had 12 for anyway. But there is no Pac-12 anymore, but that's another story for another day.
So what can we expect? Well, out of these new teams, just to get a rough idea, preseason, they're expecting Utah, which is coming next year, to finish in the top 10. The College Football News ranks them 8 preseason. They rank Texas and Oklahoma 12 and 21 in the preseason. And then we have Kansas State, they rank at 25, TCU at 31, Texas Tech at 33, Oklahoma State at 37, Baylor at 39, then one of the new teams that will play this year, Cincinnati at 43.
And let me stop you right there. Utah at that number 8 got that in the strength of having a really strong quarterback, and they had a really good team last year. But we don't see them till next year, so I'm not going to worry too much. Who knows what will happen between now and then?
All of these predictions are based on what some nerds at a newspaper say, and they're based on their schedule at the Pac-12, which is also shredded, so things will change. Cincinnati is expected to come in at 43, according to College Football News. Arizona 45, BYU, which will play this year, at 47, Central Florida, which we play this year, at 49, Kansas, which we play this year, at 52, Iowa State, who's in the old Big 12 and the new Big 12, but we don't play them this year, at 53. Then West Virginia is picked to be 56th in the nation by College Football News, followed by Arizona State, which we won't see for another year. They're at 64, followed by Colorado with a new coach,
Prime,
at 61, and followed by Houston from Dana Holgerson at 63, all of whom are supposed to, if College Football News knows what they're talking about, they're all supposed to be worse than us. But that's not how they're picking.
That's not how they pick our conference.
Our conference this year.
They pick us to finish last, 14th in the conference, 14 behind all 4 of these teams that came from this other conference, which is an insult, and I think it should be a rallying cry for that football team and for every Mountaineer fan out there. 14th. In fact, we should chant that at the games, 14th in the conference, in my opinion. Maybe that'll get the team kind of revved up, because that's a slap in the face.
Well, I'm a partisan, but I'm also a ranter, and it's nonsense. It's not going to happen that way. These guys doing the picking are full of baloney. But let's look at a couple of them. Athlon puts out a preseason pick. They rank Texas as the number 1 team in the Big 12 this year, and that's pretty
It's a safe pick.
Everybody
it's
says
an easy
it.
thing. They
They've
got a lot of
5,
talent.
right?
Got a really good quarterback and Ewers who kind of underachieved last year, and they love the coach Steve Sarkisian. But that team was only 8-5 last year. I don't see them making a jump to win this conference. This is my opinion.
They just don't think, they think that's going to be the number one team in the Big 12. They also pick Oklahoma, Athlon does, for number 2 in the conference, even though they didn't have a very good record
They were
last
6-7 last year. They only won 3 games in the conference, and we beat them in Morgantown. We were at that game, as a matter of fact.
We beat
saw that. It was a
Oklahoma
great
in
win.
Morgantown. They picked Kansas State to finish 3rd.
Kansas State was really good last year. They lost 2 games in the conference during the season, but they won the Big 12 championship game. A lot of people forget that because TCU went on to play in the Final Four. But Kansas State beat TCU in the Big 12 championship. Of course, Kansas State lost in their bowl game to Alabama, but Kansas State's got a very good team.
Most of the Big 12 lost in their bowl games.
Well, every one of them except TCU in the Final Four and Texas Tech.
But Kansas State also lost some players, so I think they're probably ranked too high in the conference.
As long as Deuce Vaughn's not there again, that little dude no one can tackle him. You can't see him, you can't find him. But Kansas State's the coach Chris Cleveland's really good.
Deuce Vaughn was an exceptional running back for Kansas State. It was a little guy, very hard to tackle. 8 up yards for them.
Caught passes, ran the ball, just did everything, and was just very and fun to watch. Kansas State's a fun team to watch.
Athlon is picking TCU, Texas Christian, next. I think Texas Christian lost some people too, and I think they did what they did last year, but based on their offense. But they did go to the playoffs, so they got to get some respect. In some ways, if I was them, I'd be offended that there's 3 other teams picked higher than me by Athlon.
They lost their player of the year in the conference in Duggan, the quarterback, and that guy made a difference. I mean, if you watched any of that stuff, he made a difference. But we'll see.
But as you and I talked about earlier, Duggan wasn't even the starter at the beginning of the year.
It's so funny because the coach who came from SMU and became the coach of TCU, it was the Big 12 coach of the year, and he didn't even pick this guy to be his starting quarterback in the preseason competition, and he took it over later on, and he became the player of the year. Yeah. What kind of coach is that? Well, because he got the job because the other guy got hurt. But anyway, I think they'll be solid, but I think from championship game where they got blown out, they're going to fall pretty far. I don't believe they're that good of a team this year.
Athlon says Texas Tech will finish behind them. Kansas will finish behind them, and Baylor will finish behind them. Those are all the old Big 12 teams. And then Athlon actually says that Central Florida will finish next. So one of the new teams coming in, they think, is going to finish in the top 8.
Their coach is Gus Malzahn. He coached at Auburn. He's a pretty good coach. They got a quarterback who's from Mississippi. Plumlee is his name, who had a really good year. We have to go down there and play him in Orlando this year. We'll see. I just don't think they're used to the competition of the Big 12 every week, but we'll find out. We'll see what happens.
I'll go on record as saying they're far overrating these new teams. These new teams, we played BYU a few years back up in the DC. FedEx Bowl. We went to that game too. They had a pretty fair team. We didn't. We should have won that game. They beat us.
We did. No, we won that game 35-32. That was actually the year with Skylar Howard. We won 10 games.
With Skylar Howard.
But
these teams have not consistently played. These 4 new teams have not consistently played the quality of the competition that we play every year, and they haven't had to travel. West Virginia travels hundreds of miles for these away games. These teams have been indulged by staying within a few hours of home. I think you're going to see these four new teams are not going to beat people up like they're saying. The nerds are basing this on stats and not on hits.
In my opinion, early in the season they may make some waves. There may be some noise in the first 5-6 games, but once that grind of the schedule starts wearing them down, they'll see the bigger, stronger athletes from the Big 12 will start wearing down those other teams. So you won't see any of these 4 new teams make any kind of surprises later on in the season. This is my opinion, of course, but
one of the other weak teams in the Big 12 is going to be Oklahoma State, according to the conventional wisdom, because they lost so many players.
They did.
I would not underestimate that coach out there in that program.
I disagree.
Although the Athlon has got them down at 8 or 9.
I disagree. I think they're spiraling the drain, and I think Gundy's gone soon. I know a lot of people out there are talking about, he's still a good
Mark
coach, he
that
still
down.
knows all that, but I think Okie State is,
We'll make him wear the dunce
I
cap
think
if
you're
he's wrong.
him and Neil Brown will be coaching somewhere in there.
Iowa State is also supposed to be one of the ones bringing up the rear. Iowa State has been, I agree that Iowa State's doing what you say Gundy's doing, because Iowa State should have had a better team a couple of years ago.
A couple years ago, I thought they were the best in the conference, but boy, they were not good last year.
They did not win a single Big 12 game except for beating us.
West Virginia.
So nobody's got optimism for that. I don't know enough about whether they've rebuilt. After that, Athlon says Brigham Young. After that, Athlon says Houston.
Speaking of Brigham Young, you know they got the quarterback Keaton Slovis, and that's a dude who was at USC with JT Daniels, and that offensive Graham Harrell, the coordinator, and he was at Pitt when we played up there at Pitt. Now he's at Brigham Young.
He moved to Pitt. Daniels went to Georgia. Then Daniels came to West Virginia. Then the Pitt West Virginia game had the two of those quarterbacks opposite each other. Now our quarterback Daniels is gone. Slovis left, and Slovis went down to Brigham Young. So we'll play Slovis again, only instead of wearing a Pitt uniform, he'll wear a Latter-day Saints uniform.
I don't see them being real good this year. That's my. But who knows?
I think Slovis was better than he showed at Pitt, but and I'm not.
He had a tough act to follow. That dude got drafted in the first round to Pittsburgh.
I think he was better than he showed at Pitt. Houston is Dana Holgorsen. Holgorsen last year had a quarterback that kept him in the games.
Clayton Tune,
He had no defense. He now has our starting running back has transferred down to Houston, along with one of our tight end, Michael Laughlin. Now, Mike disappointed me a little bit. Mathis was not quite what he could have been. But those are solid players, and they're steps up for Houston. Yeah. I think Dana has some trouble. We play Houston on a Thursday night in Houston, which is the only reason why I think it may be a close game.
They'll be fired up to play us. I'm just thinking that we dominate it physically. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
Cincinnati is also in some polls ahead of us in their picks. Cincinnati had Luke Ficknell as their coach, who was one of the ones we were considering when we went and got Brown. Ficknell has now left for greener pastures, and Cincinnati has lost a lot of solid players.
Just a few years ago, they were in the Final Four too. Remember, they played in that, but they have lost a lot of people. I think they're going to struggle.
I think with new coach and new players, I don't think I'm insulted that anybody would say West Virginia can't beat Cincinnati. I guess we'll find that out too. And then they put West Virginia as absolute last 14th in the Big 12 pick, and I love it. I love when they are that stupid. I love when they underestimate us. I would much rather be expected to lose all our games than have us swaggering in there talking about how we're going to win them all. I just don't want our fans to believe that nonsense. Real fans don't. Some of the Bollards up in the hills that only come out when we win are not real fans. They may believe it. We're gonna turn this thing around. We'll get into more detail on that.
If you watch some of these things from some of these other people in the Big 12, these other videos, podcasts, pretty much what they're believing is that we're not going to be any good. We underachieved last year. We don't have enough talent, and it's pretty much just a matter of time before Brown's fired. So I'd rather have those expectations, absolutely. But you're right. We can't think of that as a fan. We can't believe that as a fan. We have to be 14th. 14th. That's my new rally cry. 14th.
You can believe we're bad and still follow the team, but if you believe we're bad,
I'm always going to follow the team.
If you believe we're bad, you haven't been paying any attention to football. We'll give you more on that later. But the Big 12 now is going to have, after this year it's 14, next year it's going to be 16. We're going to be from coast to coast. We're going to have a lot of new faces. I think we stand on the edge of becoming one of the very big popular conferences with a lot of good football coming up. A lot of a lot of new rivalries. There's a negative because some of our old rivals are
It's
gone.
true, it's been that way.
But there's a positive because we now have some teams that are nearby. Cincinnati's nearby.
Yeah.
Central Florida's not as far.
No.
We had to travel miles and miles.
I mean, one of the things somebody did point out is Colorado and West Virginia we played them a couple of times years ago, and we have a common denominator, John Denver. He sang
true.
Rocky Mountain High and he sang Take Me Home Country Road. So we've got a little, but that's next year. Miles to go before we get there.
It's going to be a good year. It's going to be a good conference, and we're going to beat these new guys too. I welcome them all to our
Absolutely.
conference. Look forward to beating them every week.
Thanks for watching.